hey, what year is it?
The year of death.
Oh, okay, yep, I remember.
The
right.
Chinese calendar is the year of death. It's not the monkey anymore; it's death.
It's aptly named. So, hey, ladies and gentlemen, and any other creatures that might be listening, your pets. Let your pets listen to us. They'll love us.
Oh, my pets love it.
Mine do too.
So, okay. This is the Bunny Rabbit's Hole. If you've never been here to the Bunny Rabbit's Hole, it is a fun and magical place where Craig and I talk about one theme each and every week until something in that theme just makes us talk about something else. It forces us to talk about something else until we reach the end or our patience wanes and we go back to the main theme because we figure you're tired of hearing us ramble about bullshit.
But isn't that what our whole thing is about? Anyways. As Jason said, we pick a central topic.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Sorry, my assistant was bringing me a drink. So we pick a central theme. We research it every week, blah, blah. And then, we also include our opinions. It's entertainment. If you're easily offended, go away.
Yep. Okay. So we are going to talk about a theme today, which we have talked about in the past, but we felt there was a necessity to bring it up because of a specific reason that's happening in our world today. So I'm going to let you open.
All right. We are going to talk about, yet again, the Mandela Effect. Mandela 2.0, so be it, whatever.
Yes.
And I want to open it up with a story that led to us bringing this up again.
Please do.
And so my wife's friend works in a furniture shop and obviously sells furniture because that's what you do in a furniture shop. So one day he's at work. There's this coffee table. He has these people come in, look at it. They're interested. They buy it. He helps them load the table into the vehicle, waves goodbye to the table. Then it's his Friday. He goes home, relaxes, has his 2 days off, comes back to work, walks into the building, walks right by the spot where that coffee table was, and has to stop and do a double take because that coffee table is right there again. And he's like, but why? How is that table there? I sold that table. So he goes and talks to his coworkers and said, hey guys, do you know why that coffee table's there? And they're like, the coffee table's always been there. No, I sold it on my Friday. A couple days ago, I sold it. I helped them load the coffee table. Like, no, there's no record that the coffee table was sold. We have no sales receipt, nothing. The coffee table was never sold. He's like, no, I sold that coffee table. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the Mandela Effect.
Right. So the coffee table we have to point out there is not a Divic box. It's not the box from Hellraiser. Okay. It's not some creepy chair that's hanging on that bar that's in Scotland where anybody that sits in it dies. Okay, it's none of those things. It's just a coffee table that he had sold in an alternate reality.
Right.
I just could throw that out there because we'll talk about possible reasons for the Mandela Effect, which, I mean, honestly, that is a weird fucking story where he knows he sold it.
Yeah.
They keep saying he didn't.
Yeah, and to the point where he remembers helping them load it into their car.
Yeah.
And he described the car.
Exactly. See, that's pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
That's pretty fucked up. And you told me this story a little bit ago, and when you said I want to do another version of the Mandela Effect, I thought perfect, because it's been a while since we talked about this phenomenon. And as a refresher, if you don't know, the Mandela Effect was coined by a woman named Fiona Bloom in 2009. She was at a conference where she was openly talking about the death of Nelson Mandela in the 1980s. Well, Nelson Mandela didn't die in prison in the 80s. He lived on and he died of natural causes in 2013.
Yes.
But
And
there's a lot of people that remember him dying, and that's where the name Mandela Effect came from. It's from this woman coined the term.
Right. So, and also we touched on in that episode how times of social unrest or times of social change trigger Mandela effects, and 2020 is the perfect example of social unrest and social change.
Yes. In the late 80s in South Africa, it was a time of ending apartheid. If you don't know what apartheid is, it's basically racism. It's systemic racism backed by the government of South Africa. Is what it was. And the world was starting to see apartheid for what it was. So shortly or around this time, it's when people started thinking that Nelson Mandela had died, or they remember him had dying at this. So it came about from that time of social change. But now, 2020, with a pandemic, Black Lives Matter riots, the I don't want to wear a fucking face mask riots, all this other shit that's going on.
I don't take responsibility for anything, Riot.
Exactly. So we're going to start seeing a lot of this stuff. And one of the reasons we wanted to do this episode is talking about and try to not really force, but get you to be aware, because you're going to hear things right now that'll seem insignificant to you, but that you'll hear somebody say something is wrong, but think about it just a little bit. It's like in and they're not going to be huge, like knowing who you sold a coffee table to that nobody else believes you sold it, because it's still there.
Right. Well, and I'm trying to avoid being political with this, but I don't really have a choice at this point, because if you look at the state of affairs today, you look at who's in office and how everything he said in the past is catching up with him, and he turns around and denies it, and all of his supporters believe it to be fact, even though they're faced with the facts. They're basically creating their own Mandela effects.
Right. They're creating their own false narrative.
Right. And now, before we go too much farther into this, because I always say that we try to do both sides of it, this time I did some research on the other side of it.
Okay.
All right. So, there's been a lot of there's no solid research on it. There's no scientific proof of the Mandela effect, because there's no way to make the experiment because in order to make something scientific fact, you have to be able to recreate it. There's no way to actually recreate the Mandela effect.
Right.
So
there's no way in hell you can actually put the hyphen in the word Kit Kat.
Right. Or change the spelling of Berenstain Bears.
Yes.
But like, when it comes to your memory, everybody thinks, well, your memory is like a computer and it's got this hard drive where it just stores all this stuff away. Well, a perfect example is, your memory. Okay, I'm going to use Alexander Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
Now, was Alexander Hamilton a president?
No.
No, but many people believe he was. The reason for this is when you talk about the founding fathers, you can't talk about the founding fathers without talking about Alexander Hamilton.
Right.
And so when people bring up presidents and founding fathers, the neurons in your brain start triggering, and they trigger Alexander Hamilton, because like I said, you can't talk about founding fathers without talking about him, and neurons that fire together wire together.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So if you are thinking about presidents and you're thinking about founding fathers, you automatically assume Alexander Hamilton was a president.
Yes.
And
now,
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, that's where you talk about, that's where, if you've ever heard of the term memory palace, that's how you can create a memory palace, is you create different rooms, and within that room is you visualize or create something that triggers a memory, and then when you think about something, you associate it with that thing. Like, it's the red, I'm not going to say red room, because we all know what a red room is, but if it's in the red room, then we put all bad things in the red room. So you start associating, when you want to think of something, you start thinking red, and it reestablishes that memory within your thing. It's just all cognitive.
Right.
There's a word I'm looking for, which I can't remember right now, so it doesn't matter.
Right. But I mean, and you know, there are so many articles. Like I read a bunch of different articles today on, you know, all this, and you know, there was some, you know, what is that other word? Confabulation.
Confabulation?
Yeah, and I think we talked about that in our last one.
Did we?
Yeah, and confabulation is
I don't remember
basically,
that.
oh shit, no, I
I'm
can't
just
find
saying that was an example of the Mandela effect right there.
it. Right. But where is it disappeared because I had other stuff going on.
It involves the brain filling gaps that are missing in your memories that makes sense to them.
Right. And I'm gonna like go up and go and say it this way. Okay. So I I hate using song lyrics as, you know, for Mandela effects because I mean, growing up as kids, you know, that song "Wrapped Up Like a Deuce" and another runner in the
Yes.
night. Yeah, okay. I always thought it was wrapped up like a douche in the morning and the night.
Yeah, so did everybody. The bathroom on the right.
Right. And you know, so words aren't always understood. Like, do you remember the song by Howard Jones, "Things Can Only Get Better" from
Yes.
the '80s?
Yes.
Oh. Now, do you remember it being, "Do you feel afraid?" Or do you remember it being, "Do you feel scared?" I do.
Scared.
Yes. My wife remembered it as afraid,
Oh,
but it is scared.
it is okay.
No.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
had to
we
like had the song sing in my head there for a second. I'm like, nah, that just yeah, I was scared.
right. So I mean, but that's one of the reasons. And like, you know, we are the champions.
Yeah.
They say you know, we all remember at the end of the song saying "of the world,"
Of the world.
but they claim that that's not in there.
Yeah.
So, but that's, you know, a lot of times with songs, like my wife and I, or you and I, will listen to the same song. We're both going to hear it a different way.
Oh, exactly. Especially with
So,
song lyrics, because accents and the way the person sings it and inflection always changes how a
yep,
word is heard.
yep,
I've got I don't have the best hearing anyway, so I always hear words weird.
yep, same here. So, I
And
mean, but
plus there's especially this is why I don't really like doing Mandela effect with song lyrics, because there are two types of people that hear music. One is the person that hears melody, and the other one is the person who hears lyrics.
right,
And I hear lyrics as a melody. It's just the way my brain works. So I don't necessarily hear every single word that's being said. I hear how it's la 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 la
yeah,
la, and it could be going up the mountain to see grandma's house. I'm
right.
not hearing that. I'm just hearing how they're singing, and not exactly the words are. And I guess maybe
And,
that's
and see, I have a weird brain. Maybe it's because I was a musician for a long time, but I hear both.
okay.
You know, I hear the rhythm, the flow of the lyrics, because I mean, it's the flow that gets you. It's because the flow doesn't always follow the rhythm of the song.
Hmm.
But and then I hear the words. You know, so my brain breaks it all down, and I think it's because I used to compose music. You know, when we were
Hmm.
in the bands, when we'd write, you know, somebody'd write a riff and I'd write a riff, and I'd figure out a way to combine the two together and make a transition and all this other shit. So I think that's why my brain does that, because it basically analyzes the music, breaks it down so we can reform it into something we want,
Gotcha.
which is I think what most producers do.
Right.
You
Exactly.
know, but
So to go along what you're talking about with confabulation, though, the reason that memory isn't really a thing, the Innocence Project back in January 20 or earlier this year, just in 2020, they had they looked over 367 convictions that were overturned with DNA evidence that exonerated the person. The mistaken identification by eyewitnesses played a role 71% of those wrongful convictions.
mm,
So of 367 cases, over 2/3 of them were because somebody didn't remember correctly.
right,
Eyewitnesses aren't exactly witnesses. They're
no,
not, most of the time, they're not credible, because our brain
right,
does exactly what confabulation is. We fill in the missing gaps with what we want.
right. And if we see somebody and we feel like they look guilty, we automatically assume they are guilty,
Yeah. Like, is
and
it,
our brain will start telling us what they did.
Exactly. And the longer this happens, the more you start believing that was the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that people start telling themselves this, the easier it is to believe it. Like if you heard a story that a lot of people do this, you'll hear a story that somebody else tells you. Then later on, you tell that story, but you put yourself in the story. You know, you repeat somebody else's story as if you were kind of witnessing it in the story. The next time
Right.
you tell it, now you're a part of the story. You tell
Yeah.
it again later, now it's your story. And then,
Yeah.
you know, the fifth time that you repeated somebody else's story, now you believe that you were actually there.
Right. And it's like the best way to get people to believe a lie is to repeat it over and over and over again.
Right. It's actually the same principle as marketing. You have to email somebody 6 times before they start remembering your name.
Right.
You know, you tell a lie that many times, and then people start believing it.
Right.
Unless it's
Well, and
even if it was really stupid, people will
it's
still
like
believe it.
talking. Well, it's like talking to somebody. You have to say their name 3 times before you remember their name.
Exactly.
So I mean, it just so. I mean, I have examples of them that we didn't cover last time, or I don't remember if we did or not. But I also kind of want to stick with this for a bit. I said, and like, do you think that we create some of these because we want more paranormal in the world?
Um, yes, I do. I think so. There's a couple of them that I brought up. I'll bring up one in particular. That is it. Jiffy popcorn or Jiffy peanut butter? One of those is right.
Jiffy popcorn, because
Yeah,
we covered that one in the last one.
yeah. But it's Jif. It's
Right,
never been Jiffy peanut butter. It's always been Jif. So it's
right,
like it's one of those things where it's wrongful association.
mm-hmm,
It's like you have Jiffy Pop in your head, so Jiffy peanut butter has got to be Jiffy itself.
right. And so, like, I was doing some research on what causes the Mandela
Okay,
effect,
cool.
and like, I mean, there's theory. We talked about the time travelers and stuff like that, but the multiverse theory is the one that really intrigues me.
Okay.
Now, the multiverse theory, and I believe this is why is when we have events like JFK assassination, Martin Luther King assassination, what's going on today. These are all things that are going to change society as we know it and the
Hmm.
future as we know it, but sometimes it changes the past as well. You know, because I mean, a lot of these Mandela effects, what they do is they're basically changing the past.
Right.
So, you know, we're in the times where we're going to start experiencing more Mandela effects. Like,
Mm,
you know, my wife's friend, the salesman, sold a coffee table. There was other people working with him that day, and those same people don't remember him selling the coffee table.
right.
So it changed the past.
True.
So we really need to like really focus and like I mean, for example, a big Mandela effect is like you okay, we've all learned in history about the Wall Street crash of 1929.
Yes.
And following that crash, there was a bunch we heard all these stories about people jumping out of windows, committing suicide and stuff like
Yes.
that. In reality, there were no suicides.
Oh.
You know, I don't and again, this could be because it's such an intriguing like depressing story about the Wall Street crash and it's harrowing, it's terrifying. We add more terror to it, so we create these things.
Yes.
So that's kind of what I mean by we
It's
create.
embellishing.
Right. So I don't know. I'll let you go on a little bit
Well,
about now.
you know, to touch that point, it's like when you hear the news, they can't just say, Kitty was found in a tree. That
Right.
tabby cat was horrifyingly stuck in an old willow tree, that the
Right.
brave and heroic firefighters came down with their huge ladders and rescued the poor defenseless animal. No, firemen got a cat from the tree. That's the story.
Right.
But it's like in the case that you're talking about, it's like we had to sensationalize it because just having people stand in line to get unemployment doesn't make doesn't make for a great story,
No.
which is exactly what's going on today.
Right.
So what are we going to say about today, with with everything that's happening today? What will we say 20 years from now about this event? And it's kind of
Right.
like, what will we say? What are we saying about 9/11
Right.
at this time? But one of the things I want to talk about is the multiverse thing. What I honestly believe in times like this, where if you have multiple realities happening at one time. So everybody, the perfect example is if you ever watch Rick and Morty, he's always talking about infinite timelines, infinite realities, infinite universes. So he's hopping in and out of different versions of themselves net throughout the. So when we have an event like this that happens across all them things, I think the fabric between universes gets really thin, and
Yeah.
the boundary gets gets weakened to where he the person that sold that coffee table may have flown into this reality for half a second, and then they had this moment of combined consciousness, and then it snapped back to where it was. So he did in fact sell that coffee table, but it
Right.
wasn't him that sold that coffee table, if you understand where I'm going with that.
Yeah, I do. And I watched a video earlier that perfectly summed that up in a way of saying, like, so back in the 80s, we're sitting down, we're watching TV, and our television set, or the waves from the television set, somehow slipped in that parallel dimension, and we witnessed the funeral of Nelson Mandela from 2013. So our TV sets jumped into the future, some 33 years, and then snapped back.
Right.
So I mean, that goes along that multiverse theory,
Mm.
And that was an interesting video too. I don't think I saved it.
But so the other part that comes to that though is, which kind of affects us, is just false memory.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you don't really have to explain what a false memory is. False memory is that. But however, when, just like what we were talking about with Jiffy and Jiffy is just false associations, or telling the story that's not yours. If somebody was to say, no, Kit Kat has a hyphen in it. It's the Berenstain Bears. When you start talking about these things and then people start believing these things, they start second guessing themselves.
Yep.
Then they start talking about it, and then it's almost like an internet meme. It just grows from there. So whether or not it actually was anybody really believes it or not, it's one of these things where it could grow just from talking about it.
Right.
Just giving it conscious. We talked about like attracts like in the law of attraction episodes, but false memory can attract false memory.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like back in the 80s, we watched a movie called Batteries Not Included.
Yes.
Several years later, they came out with a sequel. Am I correct? It's like Batteries Still Not Included.
I don't remember that.
I kind of remember it, but now the movie doesn't exist.
Okay.
And I found that in my research today on the Mandela Effect. But when they said it, but then again, this could be that confabulation, the filling in of gaps, stuff like that, where they're saying, where I'm like going, where they brought it up, and I go, oh, that, yeah, I think I remember that. And now all of a sudden, yeah, I do remember that. So at that point, we're filling in gaps.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And but like you're talking about with the Hamilton thing, it's a perfect example of false memory. Everybody, they think of the Alexander Hamilton Aaron Burr duel that happens in the White House lawn. So you associate White House with the president, and the winner being Hamilton voila, he must be a president. Same with Benjamin Franklin. Everybody knows that Benjamin Franklin's one of the founding fathers.
He was never
And
president.
he's on money, but then again, he was not a president.
Hamilton's on money too.
True, yeah.
Whereas Lincoln just got the penny. But so like I found some more like chartreuse. What color is chartreuse? If you put in primary colors,
it's like a blue green.
See, I always thought it was pink.
Oh, see, I know that one because when I played football, my coach thought it was funny when you'd yell out colors. He'd always yell out chartreuse. So I had to look it up to find out exactly what chartreuse was.
Right. Yeah, and see, I always thought it was a form of pink.
Oh, it makes sense.
But like the Fruit of the Looms logo, you have all the fruit. Do you remember there being a cornucopia behind it?
No.
See, I do, but there was never a cornucopia behind it.
Oh.
My wife remembers the cornucopia. I'm sorry, my assistant remembers my cornucopia. You can't hit me from around a corner.
Nice. She can't throw a curveball that well.
Right. So, what did the Lone Ranger say when you take off on his horse?
Hi ho, Silver, away.
Actually, he said hi yo, Silver, away. Oh. That makes absolutely no fucking sense. I remember hi ho, Silver, away.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
Nope, but that is another example of, and that again, that can be cut down because it's a spoken word, could be cut down to us hearing it a certain way, and that's what we heard.
Right.
So, whereas we go into something like Around the World in 80 Days by Jules Verne.
Oh, yeah, we talked about this one the other day. This is kind of funny.
Yep. So, you remember, I mean, they use all these different modes of transportation. Train, ferry, steamboat, and elephant. Now, did they use a hot air balloon?
Well, it's on the cover of the book.
Right, it is. It's in the movie.
Yes.
But they never used one.
See, now that's funny because that is one of the things that you remember about, that I always remembered about, yeah.
Yeah, I never read the book, but, every book I saw on that movie had hot air balloons on it.
Yeah, right. And yeah, I saw the Jackie Chan, Steve Coogan version, and they do travel in one.
Right. And I believe the old movie they made of it, they did as well. So, and now I'm going to go into a biblical one.
Oh, all right.
Who are the four horsemen?
Pestilence, there's pestilence, death, famine, and apocalypse.
War is what you're thinking. Okay, I am right there with you. Those are the four I remember. One of the videos I watched said they were actually war, plague, famine, and conquest. So this spurred my wife and I to look up she looked it up in the Bible, and I looked it up on, Google it. So if you go by the dictionaries say four riders on white, red, black, and pale horses symbolize in pestilence, war, famine, and death, respectively. In the Bible itself, they are never actually named.
Really? So where does it come from?
Hold on a second. I got to find it again. How did I lose this? I think it might have been this. Hold on. Oh, here it is. Okay, here, I'm going to read it off. The white horse. I watched as the Lamb opened the first of the seven seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures say in a voice like thunder, "Come and see." I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown. He rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest. That's where you get conquest. I'm assuming.
Hmm.
Red, I mean, because the only one that is actually named is Death.
Right.
The red horse. When the Lamb opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come and see." Then another horse came out, and a fiery red one. Its rider was given the power to take peace from the earth and to make men slay each other. To him was given a large sword, obviously war.
Right.
The black horse. When the Lamb opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come and see." I looked, and there before me was a black horse. Its rider was holding a pair of scales in his hand. Then I heard what sounded like a voice among the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a day's wages, and 3 quarts of barley for a day's wages, and do not damage the oil and the wine." I gotta imagine that's famine.
Yeah, I guess.
It could be famine, or it could be like just about anything, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, there's no pestilence or plague I'm seeing at all here. And then the pale horse. When the Lamb opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come and see." I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades was following close behind him. They were given power over a fourth of the earth to kill by sword, famine, plague, and by the wild beasts of the earth. So, right here it says from the earth to kill by sword, famine, and plague, and by the wild beasts of the earth. So the only four of the four horsemen officially named in the Bible is Death. But yet this guy says Death was not one of them. It was war, plague, famine, and conquest.
So that's like a double effect. Because he's right. It's not it, but it's he's right and wrong at the same time.
Right, because I mean that spurred because my wife got out her Bible and she read them all to me. And then I found them on here, so I had them because I wasn't, it's just too much stuff on my desk. But so at that point, who named the four horsemen? We did in our heads.
Right, and it spread through false memory. People started talking about it, and I'm sure it's something that they've been yelling about in churches for centuries, but the four horsemen.
Right. And and going back to people making it up, like I saw one today that I was like Smokey the Bear.
Right.
Smokey Bear or whatever they call him. It's
mm-hmm.
There's that's tossed up whether it was Smokey the Bear or Smokey Bear.
Yeah.
And then, but this guy went so far as going, "Do you remember Red Suspenders?" I'm like, now that you say it, yes, but that's because you said it. Honestly, I don't remember if they fucking had suspenders or not.
Right. See, now that is leading the witness.
Yes. Which is another effect of the Mandela effect.
Yeah.
People, when you hear people saying stuff like this, you start thinking, oh, well, yeah, they're right. So instead of just assuming they're right, just kind of look it up and see, because people can make you feel like you remember something when you don't actually remember it.
Exactly. The power of, we talked about this before. It's like with emotions, emotional transference, how you can transfer how you want somebody to feel through your actions and through your statements. Now, interrogation specialists have been using these tactics for centuries, trying to get illicit responses and get people to think the way that they already know something, to spit out information that says, well, we already know that, Johnny's already said that you guys stole the money. Well, Johnny said that?
Right.
Well, fuck. Yeah, I guess we did. But
that video I watched also brought that up, and it was like, yeah, it's like, so the wife goes up to a guy, her husband says, "So when you threw my coffee table away, did you spill coffee on my couch?" And the guy's like, I never spilled any coffee. So you did throw my coffee table away.
Right.
And that's why lawyers aren't allowed to do that in court.
Right. That's why there's somebody called a judge.
Right.
That makes them stop that stuff. A good judge, anyway.
Right. But here is one Mandela effect that I found interesting, but yet again, I'm not 100% sure on because I didn't do the research on it. Where's sauerkraut from?
Generally, I always thought it was from Germany.
Yeah, but apparently it's from China.
Huh?
Yeah, that's what I thought of it. And like I said, I haven't researched it. I don't know how accurate that one is. I'm actually going to Google it right now on my phone because it's just like it's one of those things that's like, yeah, I think that's leading the witness thing again there.
Yeah.
Because it's a German word. uh, I'm going to where did sauerkraut originate?
So there's a Nobel laureate in economics called Daniel Kleinman. He just wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that he talks about in it is something called the illusion of validity, which
Okay.
is where it's a mental shortcoming where you will believe something that seems to be true without actually finding out if it's true or not. So if
Okay.
this was in fact, I always I'll break down my thought about sauerkraut is sauerkraut goes on bratwurst. Bratwursts are German. It is a staple in German food. I've gone to Gustav's, which is a German restaurant, and they have sauerkraut on fucking everything. So therefore, I put A and B together that it is German cuisine and it's on there. They must be German. So, but the illusion of validity makes me just put those two together without any actual real thought behind it.
Okay. As per germanfoods.org, so as per, where'd it go? Ah, shit. It was all highlighted in the back. It was, in fact, the Chinese who first fermented cabbage and rice wine over 2,000 years ago. Not until the 16th century did the Europeans adopt this habit of fermenting cabbage in its own juices, thus creating what we know today as sauerkraut.
Oh,
So basically, it's something that they took from the Chinese and made it their own.
gotcha.
And they named it, obviously, because I can't see Chinese people naming something in German words.
Right.
Because I mean, if you look at like the word sour means sour and kraut means cabbage in
Yeah.
German. You
Sour
know.
cabbage.
Yep. So it was actually made in China. They were the first to ever do it. Germany just perfected it and named it.
Hmm. So here's this quote from this guy's book that this is about getting there's a lot of stats involved in this, but this kind of sums up statistical analysis by people just listening. That subjects' unwillingness to deduce the particular from the general was matched by their willingness to infer from the general from the particular. Meaning, people are going to hear what the fuck they want.
Right. And that's really sad because you have we have gotten as a society so fucking lazy.
Yeah.
Our parents, when they were kids, had to work because every generation talks down about their children's generation, those
Yeah.
lazy kids and da 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 da. But those lazy kids can find out information and learn more than you did in your entire lifetime in 20 minutes
Yes.
because they have the tools to give them that.
Yes.
And many of them actually use it.
My 13-year-old stepdaughter will actually throw out stats on things that I have to look up.
Right.
And, it's like she's a little sponge. She's a lot like I am, where I love to look up and find out, the weird. And she does the same. She does the same thing. And it's funny that she knows a hell of a lot more about all this shit at age 13 than I ever did at that age.
Right.
Because she has a third hemisphere of her brain that's right in her hand, which we did not have growing up.
Exactly. And my 17-year-old daughter, her and my wife and I went up and kind of stayed on the lake one night, and we're standing out there in the dark and we're talking, and we kind of got onto the whole political subject and everything else that's going on today. And she looked over at us and said, your generation really failed us. And I wanted to argue with her, but instead I looked at her and said, "You're right. We did."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would like to argue and defend myself, but there's no defense. We failed our children.
Right.
And that's why we're in the state that we're in right now.
And where our parents failed us, their parents failed them.
Right.
I actually, so I have a theory about this. I blame our parents' generation, the boomers,
Mm-hmm.
because of Dr. Spock.
Yeah.
They were raised they raised their children on Dr. Spock, which allowed and made parents believe that, you know what, your children should have something better than what you had. Okay. So how that was taken was, you know what, I don't like to eat Brussels sprouts. I'm not going to serve my children Brussels sprouts. Okay,
Right.
you're an adult. You don't have to raise your children that way. Perfect. Now we have this our generation. We weren't raised on Brussels sprouts. Well, you know what? I don't really like green peas either. So therefore, so now our children weren't eating Brussels sprouts or green peas, and then fuck, we took it a little bit farther by, giving them a lot more leeway. But there was a lot more structure that we should have and could have been giving all along at all of these steps. But now their children, our children, are of the age of having children.
Yeah.
And this is where we're saying, like, a lot of these people are like, these kids are fucked.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, it's like, each generation that complains about the generation before them, they do it out of jealousy and insecurity because they see those kids succeeding and getting smarter than they are, and it bothers them.
And the lack of understanding.
Yes.
Which is a lot of
understanding that the world changes and you have to change with it.
We mock what we don't understand. Now,
Yep.
like our parents' generation, they grew up, in the 60s, through the hippie era, through the war protests and all that. Now a lot of them are the same people that are complaining about the protests that are going on right now. Oh, they shouldn't even have the right to protest. Didn't you protest about that? Was different. How is protesting against an unjust war and protesting against systemic racism two completely different things? They're both heinous.
Right.
And they're both trying to change society. So why is it different?
The sad thing is like my parents, I think, are a little bit younger than yours because, like, my parents were barely teenagers in the 60s.
My parents were they were at the end of their high school years at the very end of the 60s.
Yeah. And my parents were like at the beginning of their high school years at the end of the 60s.
Yeah.
So I don't, they're like, oh, we had, I'm like, you weren't a hippie.
Right.
You were part of the disco era.
Exactly.
So,
embrace it. You're not even embracing who you are.
Yeah.
And then, that's the other thing is these kids are embracing their label of millennial.
Yes, and good for them.
Yeah.
More power to them.
They didn't come up with a name. They just wear like a badge.
Right. And and thank God for those kids, because then you got that whole rally that was sold out that only 2,000 people showed up to.
And that's underestimating them. Mm-hmm. Because I found that whole funny that this generation that's worthless, that's lazy, that doesn't do anything, could subvertively create a campaign on a social media platform that no adult uses, or not very few, I should say.
Yeah.
And pull off one of the biggest political heists in history.
Yeah.
They got the president to acknowledge that they had this many requests, fake requests, for his new rally in Tulsa. He actually went on air and said that we have over 1 million people requesting tickets. Well, just because it was 16-year-old kids, 14-year-old kids, and something like there was a guy I read a story on. He was talking about his 16-year-old daughter had 100 tickets to the Tulsa rally, and guess what? They lived in Britain.
That's brilliant.
So,
Anywho,
so you don't underestimate the other
Right.
thing, and because later on in history, what we're going to see is we're going to see what these kids become, because we
Right.
saw what the hippies became. The hippies cut their hair, put on suits, started doing cocaine, and become ruthless
yes,
in
they
business.
sold their soul.
Yes, they sold their soul and they sold out all their values. They grew out of their values.
Yeah.
There was still ethics in the game, but they lost their morals to follow the ethics.
Right. And let's hope that we don't do the same.
Yeah,
I know you and I aren't, because we're pushing 50 and it's too late for us to do what they did.
Right.
But that, and you and I like to help people. I'm like,
Yeah.
So there's a difference there. Whereas our parents used to like to help people, now they just like to bitch about people.
Yeah. So,
And
you know, like my parents were so pro-union growing up that, I mean, they wouldn't even shop at Walmart because Walmart was a union buster. Now they openly shop at Walmart. They complain about the unions, and it's like, who are you people?
right. So let's go back to the Mandela Effect.
Yes, there we go. We went down that rabbit hole way too long.
And the Mandela Effect is, as we talked about in the last one with Berenstain Bears, comes down to stuff as simple as spelling. How do you spell Dan Aykroyd's last name?
Akroyd.
It is. I always thought it was Akroyd. It is Aykroyd.
I was way off. Of course, I'm not a spelling bee champ.
Right, but there's that Y between the A and K makes absolutely no sense.
No, yeah.
All right, remember Lion King and Timon and Pumbaa?
Yes.
How do you spell Pumbaa?
Pumba.
That's how I thought it was spelled too, but there's two A's at the end.
There's two A's.
Yeah.
Pumbaa.
Yeah, and it does not look right, because I wrote it out and it doesn't look right. And I swear to God.
Pumbaa.
And you remember when we were younger, if we didn't want to read a book, we just read the Cliff Notes version.
Right.
Is it Cliff Notes or is it Cliff's Notes?
I thought it was Cliff's. Like Cliff was a dude.
Yep, it is. It is Cliff's Notes, but a lot of people remember it as Cliff Notes.
Oh. I think those people are just lazy.
It is probably.
They're so lazy they can't even get the condensed version of the book right.
Right. But and I think I only have like one more or a couple more. Like Pulp Fiction. I don't know if we talked about this one, but you remember the Mr. Wolf?
Yes.
When he was driving away, what did his license plate say?
Oh shit, I don't remember.
Many people remember it saying Mr. Wolf.
Uh-huh.
But it's actually 3ABM581.
What does that mean?
Nothing.
Oh. Okay.
Not that I can think of, but everybody apparently remembers it saying Mr. Wolf. I don't remember because I haven't watched the movie in years, and I'm not going to remember a minute detail like that.
Right. Yeah, that's why I haven't seen it in a few years. So
that's why I won't let something like that influence me. And then, talking about that, we go back to Frosty the Snowman.
Yeah.
And like everybody remembers the old silk hat and the corncob pipe and the, button nose and two eyes made out of coal.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember him having a red scarf?
I do remember him having a red scarf.
Yeah, he didn't.
He didn't, because we talked about this before. The little girl's wearing a scarf in the movie or the show, and I think that's probably where we get that from.
Well,
false association.
I saw a shot with him with it, and he carried a broom. Him walking, and kids following him, and there's like 3 of the kids were wearing red scarves. Most of the kids were wearing red,
Right.
so that's gonna trigger something like that. But here's the odd thing: they're all walking through the snow, and half of them are wearing shorts.
Right.
I'm like, it's like the writer and the artist and the director and everybody else did not ever live anywhere where there was snow.
Right. Exactly. The one I will fight somebody over is the fact that I distinctly remember the movie Shazam starring Sinbad.
Kazam?
Huh?
Wasn't it Kazam? Oh no, Kazam was with.
Kazam was the actual Shaquille O'Neal one. But I remember Sinbad playing a genie.
You know, last time we did this, I remembered it too. Now I don't.
Huh.
Dog doesn't either.
Yeah.
But see, I think that can also play into these things, such as my wife's friends' employees not remember him selling the coffee table.
Right.
Whereas they were present when he did it, but they don't remember it. Now, we talked about it in the last one, and I distinctly remembered it with you. Now I can't remember it at all.
Huh.
I think some Mandela effects, I think, can turn into reality.
Oh, there you go.
You know,
so I think Sinbad should just capitalize on the fame and just start cashing those checks.
Yeah, why not?
I'm not saying I enjoyed the movie, but I remember it.
Right, because I was reading an article, and there was a Reddit user who he bought 2 copies of the movie because he worked at a video store, and he watched them over and over and over again, and he could replay the plot or tell you the plot and everything about it. But now he's like, where's this movie? Why doesn't it exist? I mean, I watched it. I owned it.
I owned it, but he can't find it.
Right. So that's how they become reality.
Yeah. Exactly. Like we've talked about this in other episodes too, the Native American theory of the tulpa, which is a tulpa is something that you talk into existence.
Right.
You know, it's the fictional story, and they're you know the Native Americans would refer to it as like a tale, but they would talk about it enough to where it would actually become alive. And we use the example. Would you shut? Yes, I'm telling the story again.
Sounds like a sick cow.
She is a cow. No, but we've used the example of Slenderman. Slenderman started as a Photoshop contest thing, and then it grew into creepypastas where they gave it a backstory, and then eventually became a movie, and it became this cult phenomenon, and then it became real when 2 little girls tried to kill their friend in the name of Slenderman. Now, right. Is the beast real? Is this faceless creature with tentacles real? Does it steal children? No. It's no more real than, say, the boogeyman or the Babalu or the Babadook, any of those things. It's not physically real, but it became real when they tried to murder in the name of. And so the same type of thing is there's so many of us that believe that this movie existed, that it, God damn it, it does.
Right. But again, as going back to the law of attraction and all that stuff, it's that power of suggestive thinking, the power of wishing something into existence. Like, oh man, I really want this job. And then I can't tell you how many times, like I told my wife, like the 2 liquor stores I manage now, when we moved to this house and they were across the street, I remember thinking at one point, man, it'd be cool to have a job there if I had to work. Then I could just walk across the street.
Right.
Now I manage them.
Exactly.
I did the same thing the first time I walked into Sam's Club. you know, the very first time I ever walked in there to shop with friends, I'm like, wow, this is a really cool store. I think it'd be kind of neat to work in a store like that. Years down the road, without even remembering that, I applied for Sam's Club and started working for them. Never do it again, but you know, everybody has their own experiences and stuff like that. I'm not getting into the politics and all the other bullshit.
Right. It just wasn't a job for you.
Right, but that's how we think things into existence.
Exactly.
There is power in thought. There is power in words,
mm-hmm.
And those are the things that we need to think about. And those are, and with all the social unrest right now, words are extremely powerful.
Yes.
So we really need to be aware of what we are saying and how we are saying it and what context. I mean, you may think what you're saying is a joke. Somebody else is going to take it a completely different way.
Exactly. Now, where I make the assertion a lot that it's like, you know, people should just laugh a lot more. Now, I'm gonna quote Gary John Bishop, who wrote the book Unfuck Yourself. Now, if you haven't read this book, I highly recommend. You've read it. I've read it. I highly recommend doing it. Get the Audible version of it. Whatever you got to do, just read this book. It's really good, because what he goes along and says is not only is it words give power, so you can't just sit there, you know, do positive affirmations, say I'm a snowflake, and like to use his example, tell yourself I'm a snowflake in a mirror, and it's not going to happen. You're not a snowflake. But actions after the words is what happens. Now, this is twofold, because saying a derogatory thing about another human being in itself doesn't have much power. But when people rally around the word and show, you know, even faith to the words that are being said, or do some kind of action, use slurs, get into people's faces, protest, destroy stuff, you know, that's when there's two sides to words and actions become our reality.
Right. A perfect example of that is the African American NASCAR racer who had a noose hung in his garage, and then they claimed it wasn't a noose. I saw a picture of it. It was a fucking noose. They're like, no, that's just a pull chain for the garage door. Nobody puts a noose on the end of their pull chain for the garage door.
A noose there's a specific way that you tie a noose, and in a lot of states, if you tie a noose with a certain amount of coils, I believe it's 13, it's actually a criminal offense. I think Mississippi's one of those. You actually have to be an actual executioner to tie that specific hangman's knot. But I saw the picture of the noose. I'm not going to call it anything else. Now, the part that I found the most disturbing was after the FBI investigation. They said the noose had been there since 1999 or 2019. So it'd been there almost a year, if not longer. Now, the fact that the first race back after this, it happens to be in the garage that this guy gets.
Yeah.
It was, first of all, it should have been taken down back then. Second of all, doesn't anybody do any inspection of these garages?
Yeah. Doesn't anybody have any fucking common sense?
Yeah, right?
Oh shit, here comes the peanut gallery.
Well, here's the other thing that I noticed looking at the pictures. That rope is white.
Yeah.
A rope that's a year old, especially if it's been used
In a garage?
In a garage.
By mechanics?
By mechanics.
Yeah.
It's not going to be white.
Right. Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bit sketchy. But, you know, so this is one of those examples about words and actions creating reality.
Yes. Now,
and the Mandela Effect is not about that.
Yep. I want to throw out one point real quick. Another point that he makes in this book is remember that everything is solvable. That if you can't see a solution, it only means that you haven't worked it out yet.
Right.
So just because that you say things and you do some actions that are bad or not working out to your advantage, just means that you have to work it out a little bit longer.
Right. Yeah, and that is a great book. I loved it. I highly recommend reading that. But yeah, so back to the Mandela Effect and back to, us creating our own Mandela Effects. I believe a lot of people are doing that. I think everybody's like, it's a, because the term didn't even get coined until 2010.
Yeah.
Nobody even started talking about it until 2010. So it's a relatively new subject. It's only 10 years old. So, granted, it's been around a lot longer, so because you and I both remember sitting down in the 80s and saying, "Oh, Nelson Mandela died."
Right. And I distinctly remember having conversations with people about what does Darth Vader say to Luke in Empire?
Right.
It's, "No, I'm your father," not
Right.
"Luke, I'm your father."
Right.
So, it's one of those things that pop culture gets you to say wrong. And in fact, there was even T-shirts back then that had the wrong quote on it. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, these little snippets of pop culture, have been, it's like what you've been saying have been around for a long time. And especially when it comes to song lyrics, because like my father fucked up so many songs from the 60s and 70s growing up for me. So
yeah, well, like you remember the song by the Bangles, Manic Monday?
Yeah.
My stepmom always sang it as Magic Monday. I'm like, did you listen to the rest of the lyrics and see how fucked up that would be if that would be considered your Magic Monday? Because Sunday's your fun day. Because you wish it were Sunday, because that's your fun day. But yeah.
Did
So
you ever see the title of the song?
Probably not.
I mean, generally people get the titles of the songs right. It's just a one word here or there, not the one song that they repeat 700 times in a 4-minute segment.
Right. Yeah, that part always makes me. I'm guilty of it. Like I said, I wrapped up like a douche every morning, every night.
Yeah.
But it's just, that's why I don't like to use song lyrics, because like you said, the inflections, the accents, even though we listen to like Iron Maiden, if you listen to them singing, you're like, oh, they're American, but no, they're actually British. They have British accents. British. It just doesn't come across when they sing, which is really weird to me.
Yeah.
It always has been. All of these British singers, when they sing, they have no accent and sound more like we do.
Right. And then when you hear him talk, like, whoa, who's that?
Yeah. Oh shit. People that stutter can sing, she said.
Oh, yeah.
So that, it just kind of makes sense that the accents would go away.
Yeah.
If your stutter goes away.
Yeah, if your stutter goes away, then your accent would go away too, I guess.
Right.
But why would it be like we speak, though? That's the strange thing to me. Yeah. Why wouldn't it be like, why isn't it like if we sang, we had a British accent?
The Queen's English.
Right. I don't know. Just really weird.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, yeah. Another rabbit hole to go down.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Another one we can go down is it hoodoo or is it voodoo?
Where are we going with this?
I don't know. That's going to be a future episode.
Okay.
I'm Mandela affecting that into existence.
I'm writing that one down. Voodoo that you do so well.
Right. But because some people call it hoodoo and some people call it voodoo, or are they two different branches of voodoo?
Is it hoodoo being Haitian voodoo?
Could be.
Could be just a slang for that. I don't really know. I'm just speculating.
Well, I know voodoo originated from Haiti based off Catholicism.
Yes.
But I've also heard it called hoodoo, so that's where it gets confusing. I'm gonna definitely do some research.
We'll
on
have to
that.
look into that one.
Who wants to see an episode or listen to an episode about voodoo? Raise your hands. We can't see you.
Like and or subscribe or comment.
Right. So I think we've pretty much done all we can with the Mandela Effect.
Mm-hmm.
You be the judge. You tell us what you think, because we're not here to tell you what to think. We're just here to give you different avenues of thought.
And we're here to make you, when you think something's wrong, sit back and enjoy it.
Right. Well, depends on the wrongness.
Okay, all right. So if somebody says a random bit of trivia to you that is, is obviously wrong, then sit back and enjoy it because you know that they're wrong.
Right.
And you're right.
And you know what? A wise man once said, you don't have to be right all the time.
That's true. And I had some idiot tell me that because she was right brain, she's smarter than me.
Okay.
I laughed.
I would too. Because what's the point?
Right. And I laughed and walked away. Like, okay.
I mean, arguing with people will not change their minds.
Some people won't change their mind.
In today's society, showing people facts doesn't even change their mind.
Right.
And that's the sad state of affairs we're in.
And
so,
hopefully that's a Mandela effect that will be wrong in the future, that facts are facts again.
Yes, let's manifest that.
Yes. Let's work together.
Right. Let's make it a better world.
We learned that we want to work together.
Right. Yeah, and we want to make a better world. I mean, yeah, we sit here, we bitch, we moan, we talk, we joke.
And my dog whines and moans.
And my wife interrupts. Just kidding. I have to say that.
But that was a good point she made about the rope.
It was a really good point. She has very valid interruptions. But so to sum up tonight's episode, we talked about some of the causations of Mandela effects, what the Mandela effect can cause, and some new ones.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I can't sum up anymore because you summed it up. A succinct little bow, and then this little nugget that you can just take home and plant, and then let that plant grow, and it'll grow into like a tree, and be like a tree of knowledge, of worthless knowledge, but it's some kind of knowledge.
I have a head.
It's like the Cliff's Notes version of the knowledge tree. How about that?
Right. Yeah, I have a head full of worthless knowledge.
Me too. That's why we do this show.
Right. So with that being said, peace out. Love you guys.
Insert tagline here.